Hey, quick question. Have you bought anything lately and thought, wait, this used to be cheaper? Maybe it's your phone. Maybe it's your car payment. Maybe it's literally just groceries, eggs, olive oil, a bag of rice. And you're standing there in the aisle doing the mental math like, did I just get poorer or did everything get more expensive? You probably blamed inflation. Maybe corporate greed. Those are fair guesses. But there's another culprit hiding in plain sight. One that politicians love to announce with chest-puffed pride, and one that you almost never actually see. It's called a tariff, and it's basically a hidden tax that gets charged at the border before anything even reaches a store shelf. Here's the wild part. The people who impose tariffs will tell you they're protecting you, that they're fighting for your jobs and your country. But the reality, it's less a shield and more a high-stakes poker game between governments. And you, the everyday consumer, are the chips on the table. So in this video, we're going to break down what a tariff actually is, how a trade war starts and spirals out of control, why these things rarely work the way politicians promise, and, most importantly, who really ends up paying the bill. Spoiler, it's not the other country. Let's get into it. What is a tariff, really? All right, let's start from the very beginning. A tariff is a tax, plain and simple. But not a tax on your income or your property. It's a tax that a government places on goods coming in from another country. Imports, foreign stuff crossing the border. Now here's where the first big misconception lives, and it's one that even some politicians seem confused about. The other country doesn't pay the tariff. China doesn't write a check to the US Treasury. Germany doesn't send a wire transfer. The company importing the goods, which is usually an American business, pays that tax at the border. A US importer brings in steel from abroad, and before that steel ever reaches a factory floor, they've already handed money to the government. Think of it like a toll booth. You want to drive your car through? You pay the gatekeeper. The road doesn't pay. You pay. And if you're a business, you're going to do what every business does. You pass that cost along to the next guy, and eventually, all the way down the line, to you. So a tariff isn't the other country getting punished. It's more like a tax that starts at the border and ends in your wallet. Simple concept. Massive consequences. Let's talk about why governments keep using them anyway. Why do governments love and hate them? Okay, so here's the government's pitch for tariffs. And to be fair, it's not completely without logic. Argument 1. Protecting home turf. If foreign goods are flooding your market and they're cheaper than what your domestic factories can produce, local businesses get crushed. So you slap a tariff on the foreign goods, make them more expensive, and suddenly, made in your country is competitive again. Steel workers keep their jobs. Factory towns don't become ghost towns. That's the idea. Argument 2. National security. Some industries are just too important to outsource. Steel, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals. If you're 100% dependent on a rival country for something critical, you're vulnerable. Tariffs can force domestic production of things your country genuinely cannot afford to be without in a crisis. Argument 3. Money. Honestly, this one doesn't get talked about enough. Tariffs generate billions in tax revenue. It's one of the oldest and most reliable tools governments have for filling their coffers. Not glamorous, but it's real. Now, the other side. And this is where the economic reality tends to crash the party. Problem 1. You pay more. If an American manufacturer has to pay a 25% tariff on imported steel, do they just absorb that cost and move on? Of course not. They raise prices. So your next car costs more. The can your soda comes in costs more. Everything made with that steel becomes a little more expensive, and that's coming out of your pocket, not the steel exporters. Problem 2. Retaliation. This is where things get ugly fast. When country A hits country B with a tariff, country B doesn't just shrug and take it, they hit back. And they're usually smart about where they aim. They target industries that will cause the most political pain. Farmers, for example, soybeans, corn, pork. Because if farmers in swing states start losing export markets, that's a political problem the government can't ignore. So you start with one tariff meant to protect one industry, and suddenly you've got a trade war, with pain spreading in every direction. How a trade war becomes a domino effect. Trade wars have a rhythm to them. It's almost predictable once you know the pattern. Country A says their domestic industry is under threat, so they impose a tariff. Country B calls it unfair and retaliates with their own tariff. Country A doubles down. Country B escalates again. And before long, you've got this tit-for-tat spiral where both sides are piling on restrictions, and the global trade machine, which depends on things flowing freely, starts grinding to a halt. But here's what makes it even messier. Supply chains. Most things you own weren't made in one place. Take your smartphone. It might be designed in California. The chips inside? Probably Taiwan. The rare earth minerals? Possibly the Democratic Republic of Congo. The assembly? Often China or Vietnam. And then it gets shipped to you. Every stop on that journey is a potential tariff hit, and those costs compound. You're not just paying one tariff. You might be paying the downstream effects of 4 or 5 different trade restrictions, all baked into the final price of one product you bought at the mall. Now let's talk about something very recent and very real. Between 2024 and 2025, the US-China trade relationship escalated dramatically. The US raised tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles to 100%. That's not a typo. A car that costs $30,000 suddenly faces $30,000 in additional taxes to enter the US market. The stated goal was to protect American EV manufacturers from cheaper Chinese competition. China's response? They didn't just raise tariffs back, they restricted exports of critical components used in drones and consumer electronics, components that American and European manufacturers depend on. Suddenly the trade war isn't just about cars, it's bleeding into aerospace, into tech, into defense. That's the domino effect in real time. One move, and you can't control where it stops. So who actually comes out ahead when tariffs get thrown around? The winners in the short term are fairly narrow. Domestic producers in the protected industries, your steel workers, your local manufacturers who suddenly face less foreign competition. They get a breather. The government treasury also wins, at least initially, because tariff revenue is real money coming in. The losers are a much longer list. Average consumers, that's most of us, face a higher cost of living across the board. Exporters lose access to foreign markets when other countries retaliate, so farmers, tech companies, and manufacturers who sell overseas all take a hit. Small businesses get it especially rough, because they don't have the resources to restructure entire supply chains the way a massive corporation might. They just absorb the pain, or they close. And here's the uncomfortable long-term truth. Studies looking at past tariff episodes, the steel tariffs of the early 2000s, the broader trade war of 2018 to 2020, consistently found that the costs paid by consumers and downstream industries outweighed the benefits to the protected sectors. You save a few thousand jobs in one factory, and you quietly raise costs for millions of households across the country. That's not a left or right argument. That's just math. In the end, tariffs are a tool of realpolitik. They're blunt, they're political, and they send a message. Sometimes that message is necessary. Sometimes a country genuinely needs to protect a critical industry or push back against unfair trade practices. But here's what you should always remember when you hear a politician announce a new tariff with a big press conference. They're not making the other country pay. They're making you pay. Every time you buy something, every time you fill your cart, every time you tap your credit card at checkout. You are on the front lines of every trade war. You just never get a press conference about it. So to wrap it all up, tariffs are taxes on imports, paid by domestic businesses and ultimately passed on to consumers. They're used as tools of economic protection, negotiation leverage, and yes, sometimes straight-up retaliation. They can protect specific industries in the short run, but they almost always raise prices broadly and risk triggering trade wars that spiral beyond anyone's original intention. Now I want to hear from you. Have you actually noticed specific price hikes where you live? Electronics? Groceries? Something random? Drop it in the comments below. Because the real impact of these policies isn't in the trade data, it's in your everyday life. If this video helped things click, share it with someone who's been confused about why their grocery bill keeps going up. And we'll see you in the next one.